Have you ever wondered why a crowd rushes to buy something just because it's marked limited time? Or why people line up for hours for a product they don't even need? No one points a gun to their head. No one forces them. And yet, they all obey. This is where George Orwell's warning begins. The most terrifying control isn't enforced through violence. It's psychological. It's about programming the mind to obey without even realizing it. In 1984, the government didn't just surveil, they shaped thoughts. They didn't only burn books, they rewrote history. The most powerful weapon wasn't a gun. It was fear, wrapped in consensus. The party didn't need to tell you what to think. They made you want to think it. Because when the majority agrees, you stop questioning. That's the trap. This is how totalitarianism truly works, not through constant punishment, but by manufacturing agreement. Orwell's genius was showing us that dictatorship doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Let's bring it to today. Every time you scroll through social media and see everyone echoing the same opinion, a subtle question appears in your head. Am I the only one who disagrees? That's when self-censorship begins. Not because you're forced, but because you're afraid of isolation, of standing out. This is what psychologists call pluralistic ignorance, the belief that your private doubts are invalid because no one else is expressing them. So you conform. You like the post. You repost the opinion. You laugh at the joke, even if it bothers you. And bit by bit, your own beliefs start to fade. In 1984, Orwell introduced this terrifying idea of thought crime. Not just saying the wrong thing, but even thinking the wrong thing could make you guilty. Sound dramatic? Let's look closer. Studies show that over 62% of people have admitted to hiding their real opinions online out of fear of backlash. Not because it's illegal, but because it feels dangerous. That's the brilliance and the horror of social conformity. It doesn't need police. It just needs people watching each other. And once you begin censoring yourself, no one else has to. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you stayed quiet? Not because you didn't know what to say, but because you were afraid to say it. That moment right there? That's the beginning of control. Not with chains, but with silence. And Orwell saw it coming. You might think people are controlled by laws, by authority, or by violence. But Orwell knew better. In 1984, people weren't truly ruled by rules. They were ruled by fear. Fear of punishment, fear of humiliation, fear of vanishing, fear of being watched, and worst of all, fear of thinking differently. There was a word for it, thought crime. A moment of rebellion, even in your own mind, could be enough to erase you from existence. The state didn't just want your obedience. It wanted your loyalty, your inner agreement, your silent surrender. It's chilling. But what's more chilling is how close it hits to reality. Think about how you behave when you know someone's watching. Your tone changes. Your posture shifts. Your choices become safer. Now imagine being watched 24/7. Not just by cameras, but by other people. Your neighbors, your coworkers, your family, your followers. This is panopticism, a concept by philosopher Michel Foucault, where power operates not by constant punishment, but by making you believe you could be punished at any time. Surveillance becomes internalized. And this is exactly how modern fear works. We no longer need Big Brother screaming at us. All it takes is a viral scandal, a public cancellation, a whisper on Twitter, and suddenly the fear of social death is worse than actual punishment. In 1984, people would turn in their own children to avoid suspicion. They betrayed lovers, friends, anyone, just to save themselves. And today, people dox their neighbors, leak private conversations, destroy reputations, not for justice, but to avoid becoming the next target. A recent study by the Pew Research Center found that 46% of adults now say they avoid expressing political views online because they're afraid of backlash. And nearly 1 in 3 say they've changed their real-life behavior due to fear of social judgment. So Orwell was right. Fear doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be present. You don't have to be in prison to feel like a prisoner. You just have to feel watched. And once fear creeps into your thoughts, your identity, and your relationships, it's already won. And here's the catch. The more you fear standing out, the easier you are to control. So ask yourself, are your beliefs really yours? Or are they shaped by what you're afraid to lose? What if I told you that the most powerful weapon isn't a gun, a bomb, or even fear, but a word? In 1984, Orwell created the concept of Newspeak, a simplified, altered version of English where words were removed, inverted, or fused to reshape reality itself. Words like freedom, justice, or revolution were either erased or stripped of their meaning. Instead, people spoke in phrases like double plus good or crime think. Why? Because Orwell understood one terrifying truth. If you can't say it, you can't think it. Language is the operating system of thought. Limit the vocabulary, and you limit what people can imagine, question, or even feel. And here's where fiction becomes real. Have you noticed how certain phrases dominate public discourse? Words like disinformation, harmful speech, inclusive, or problematic, they're used to label and shut down entire conversations. Not to spark debate, but to prevent it. Psychologist George Lakoff explained how metaphors and frames shape political thought. When we hear a word like illegal alien versus undocumented immigrant, our emotional response changes instantly. Same person, same situation, different language, different reaction. This isn't just semantics. It's cognitive manipulation. In fact, a Stanford study in 2021 found that participants' moral judgment shifted up to 27% depending on how an issue was worded. Orwell warned us, control the dictionary, and you control the dialogue. Control the dialogue, and you shape reality. Eventually, people start policing their own minds, not just their speech. That's the brilliance of Newspeak. It doesn't just silence you. It makes you forget what silence even means. Today, we see this in digital spaces too. Algorithms boost certain narratives while burying others. Hashtags get shadow banned. Comments disappear. Words are flagged. Voices are filtered. And it's not just governments, it's corporations, platforms, even peer pressure. Over time, people self-censor, not because they agree, but because they're exhausted. Because thinking differently now feels like a risk. So ask yourself again, are your thoughts really yours? Or are they the result of the language you've been allowed to use? George Orwell once said, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears." It was their final, most essential command. And that's not just a dramatic line, it's the core of how totalitarian control operates. In 1984, the ruling power doesn't just aim to rewrite history. It seeks to destroy your very ability to perceive truth. When the protagonist Winston tries to hold onto his memory of a different past, of a world before lies were law, he's tortured until he not only says that 2 plus 2 is equal to 5, but believes it. The state's goal isn't to make you lie. It's to erase your internal compass of truth entirely. And this theme isn't confined to fiction. In the real world, psychological experiments have shown how easily people can be manipulated under pressure. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch conducted a famous study where participants were asked to judge line lengths. When placed in a group where everyone else deliberately gave the wrong answer, a large number of participants conformed, even though they clearly saw the right answer with their own eyes. This shows how social pressure alone can twist our sense of reality. Now imagine what happens when that pressure comes not just from peers, but from every screen, every book, every school, and every law. This is the heart of Orwell's warning. When language is corrupted, reality becomes subjective. In the book, this is embodied in the manipulation of language through Newspeak, a system that eliminates words like freedom, rebellion, or truth. Because if you can't describe the idea, you can't think it. Here's a chilling insight. In modern times, this manipulation doesn't always come in the form of brute force. It often comes in the form of entertainment, distraction, and overload. Algorithms serve you curated truths. Influencers reframe reality. Censorship is justified under the guise of safety. Gradually, the collective sense of what's real starts to fray, not through a war, but through a whisper. Just like in 1984, the danger lies not in one powerful dictator, but in millions willingly surrendering their minds. A population that forgets how to question becomes a population that no longer remembers how to see. And maybe the most terrifying part? In Orwell's world, love itself is a threat to control. When Winston falls in love with Julia, their passion is not just a personal act, it's political. It asserts an inner truth that can't be erased. So the system does what it always does, crushes it, destroys love to protect power. In the end, Orwell doesn't give us a hopeful ending. Winston is broken. He loves Big Brother. The truth dies. But 1984 isn't meant to leave us hopeless. It's meant to leave us awake. Because in a time when reality is up for grabs, simply refusing to surrender your mind, your memory, your ability to question, is a radical act. So ask yourself, what are you still willing to believe, even if the whole world says it's false?